live? Are we live?
आप पूछो ना
Are we live? Welcome to a fireside chat. करना पड़ेगा ना? Without the fire.
on वही product engineering and generative AI. वो बोल दो.
Oh, okay.
Hey, so hello folks. Welcome to our fireside chat on product engineering and generative AI. I am Shirish.
Hey, I'm Varun.
I typically participate in a lot of product engineering discussions with a lot of customers worldwide. And typically Varun looks into a lot of AI related solutions in those products, right Varun?
Yep.
So we just sort of having this conversation so that we could provide insights around what we are seeing these days, especially when it comes to embedding AI into products. And that's where we thought of sharing this already there online. So let's get started quickly with a few context setting items, as in how do we get started and what is generative AI. Varun, would you like to take us through a bit on generative AI as a concept, as a new rage that's there in the market,
Right.
and how those, or how it can impact the overall product engineering space?
Sure. So avalanche is probably a better word than rage. You know,
Okay.
there's an avalanche of
Right.
AI models and all things AI that's happening right now. So let's like you said, let's take a step back and look at what exactly is generative AI. So generative AI is basically a AI model that is trained to be able to generate data, right? So when I say generate data, it can generate text, it can generate images, it can generate audio, it can generate video, it can generate any kind of digital data, right? That's what generative AI is. And how it does it is it basically recognizes patterns in the data that it is trained on, and then it is able to, based on that pattern, determine the next possible element in the pattern. Like if there's a sentence, then hi, I am, and then what is the next word that it can predict?
An intelligent guy.
Yes, it will say an intelligent guy. Yes,
And
thank you for that.
hopefully it understands that.
Yes, yes,
That I'm
right,
intelligent.
exactly. So that's what generative AI is,
Okay.
in its gist. And now since it's generative, but then it's also AI in the terms that because of the way it generates things, you can figure out that it's probably intelligent. It can help you answer a lot of questions. The popular generative AI models that we have right now, like GPT-3, GPT-4, Anthropic's Claude, and all the other generative models that are popular right now, they are able to help you answer a lot of questions that you might have, general questions, like because they are trained on a large corpus of data that is basically the entire internet. Right.
Okay.
So instead of doing a Google search, you can just ask it, and then it will give you an answer in a natural language form. That's
Okay.
what generative
But
AI
then,
is.
I still get a lot of questions that how is it still different from the traditional AI models, wherein a lot of investments have gone
Right,
down, right,
right.
over a period of time, and people
Right.
have been building a lot
Right.
of models in-house,
Right.
especially large enterprise customers who have the metal to
Correct.
invest in
Correct.
such
Correct.
items. So how is it different from the investments that have gone into AI in the
Right.
past?
Right. So the we have a visitor.
Yes.
So
Welcome.
how it's different from the other AI models is one very basic difference is that it is the way you get the input to it is text based, as in you just give a statement as an input, you get something as an output. It's as simple as that, right? And that is the reason which is which is why we have the rage and the avalanche or whatever it is, right? Wherein you just give it an input as a text, it's just a text based input, you get a text based output. It's as simple as that. The other AI models that have been there, to use it you need engineers, right? You need ML engineers who know how to train a model, build a model, and then they need to run some kind of a prediction or inference or something on top of that model. There's a lot of engineering effort involved, right?
Exactly.
And these have to be specialized engineers who understand AI and ML. But now with generative AI being so largely and widely available, That has changed, and that's why the entire, this
So
thing.
is it like you mean to say that the intelligence is now encompassed in some sort of a service or some sort of an offering to
Something
which
like
you
that.
can
Yeah,
utilize or
yeah.
you can pass on details and then you
Yes.
get the required response which you can further utilize for your own processing?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
so that has made it much more democratized is what I
Correct,
feel. That's the
correct,
reason we are
correct.
seeing a lot of boom, as in since November things have gone crazy completely, right?
Absolutely,
Every other
yes.
day we are seeing a new AI product being launched.
Correct.
So is this something which is again custom built or they are building on top of models that are open sourced recently?
Right. So November is when things started becoming crazy, but the actual idea behind generative AI, it started sometime, much before
Much
that,
before
when
that. Yes.
this paper called Attention is Everything
Okay.
came up, right, where
Right.
they talk a bit about how attention is important in neural networks. I'll not get into the details
Yep.
because
Yep.
it's too technical, but that is when it started. GPT-3 is when things started. GPT-3 3.5 is when things started becoming crazy,
Crazy. Yes.
right? But before that, there was GPT-2, there was GPT-1, and those are right now available as
Available
open
today. Yes.
source models, which you
Right.
can use, pre-train them, fine-tune them, and use it as an open source alternative. And to answer your question, there are a lot of models that are available open source. You yourself can take a model and run it on your own infrastructure, and we can probably talk a bit
Yeah, we
about
can
that.
we
But
can talk a bit
yeah,
about that probably later during the conversation.
sure.
But again, coming back to the rage piece or the avalanche piece, right? There are a lot of product owners, VP of engineering that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, and they have this kind of a thought process going around constantly these days that they would want to leverage this power of AI in their existing products and
Correct.
get an edge over the
Correct.
competition and
Correct.
cater to their customer base in a better and efficient manner.
Correct.
But the challenge that these people are typically facing is how do they get started, right?
Right.
What can be the use cases that they can look at?
Got
Obviously,
it.
they do understand a lot about their customer and the pain problems and how AI can solve a few of those, but how do how do people get started with this?
Right.
Like any
Right.
specific ways of identifying use cases in various domains? Can you speak a bit on that?
Sure. So, identifying use cases is going to be very specific to the kind of products that they are building, right? One very common use case that I have seen come up almost everywhere is something like a chat with data kind of a use case, where
Right.
you have a large corpus of data. You can use an AI model to,
Train.
index that data basically, right? And then store it as a vectorized index, which are called embeddings into some database you have. And you do something called retrieval augmentation, wherein you build a chatbot where you ask question based on the data you have, and the chatbot responds in natural language, right? Now, the thing here is, there are a lot of chatbots or, chat as an interface that a lot of people have built, right?
Right. Right.
But what you would have seen till now is, although the interface is chat, they ask you a question and they give you four options.
Correct.
Swiggy,
Yes.
Zomato,
Yes.
food ordering apps are very common use case where you say my order is delayed,
Right.
what's the problem? And they'll say my order is delayed, I can't reach the restaurant, the tracking page is not
So the
working.
answers are
The
limited, is what you're
answers are
saying.
limited.
Yep.
But with generative AI, if you build an actual chatbot, you could have that, you can make it a
A full
natural language
conversation.
interaction, wherein
Right.
you don't have to select a fixed input. You can just type in whatever you want, and then it will respond. It will
Yeah, and
understand
by the
what
way,
it
for
is.
the audience, this is a natural conversation. This is not AI generated, just for your information. But it can sound as natural as this conversation, is what
Exactly.
you're
It
trying
can
to say.
sound as natural as
Okay.
this conversation, where
Okay.
you can say, hey, I can't see my order, where is it, or whatever it is. Like, you can say anything in natural language, and that can be interpreted by the system.
So it can be like
Right.
order food for me.
Order food for, yeah,
And
that's
my
a,
mood
exactly.
today
Yeah.
is to have something which is
Yep.
non-veg and probably suits the monsoon
Correct.
conditions, and it should
Correct. Correct.
give me the options. Cool.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes. So
So
it'll
that can
order
be one of
kanda
the way.
bhaji and chai for you. Right.
So that can be one of the use cases, is
That
what
is
you're saying.
definitely one of the use
Um,
cases.
let's say, like, I've been speaking to a lot of BFSI customer base, right?
Okay.
Since people are probably in the current market's questions, right? How do I get an edge? Like,
Right.
so especially for the BFSI customer base, do you think, or can you speak a bit on what can be the use case? Obviously, chatbot is one such use case.
Correct, correct.
Or any other that you could think of.
For the BFSI space, there are a few other use cases. Like you said, chatbot is probably a very good use case there, wherein a lot of the
Predictions.
apps or whatever that are there, consumer-facing things are probably limited right now. Chatbots are a very good problem as a problem statement there.
Yeah.
In addition to just chatbots, right? There are a few other things that can be done. For example, understanding a large corpus of data that might maybe there's a new rule that has come out or a new something that has come out, right? Some guidelines that have been published by some governing entity
Right,
or anything
right,
like
right.
that, right? And you would want to
The rules should validate.
yeah, you would want to validate certain things against those rules, and those rules have come out as natural language. They are not
Got it.
rules structured in a way where a
It's a
computer
conditional kind of
program
thing.
would understand, right?
It's not
So
more of a condition, it's like a
exactly,
text
it's
rule
like a
and then it
text,
should
like if
appropriate.
this happens then this should happen, but if this happens then that happens, is what is written in plain English.
Nice.
Right now you can use a large language model to translate that into rules that your program would understand, right? So this is something that's a really good use case. It's not limited to BFSI. It's
Yep.
limited. It can be applied anywhere, but definitely something that's applicable in BFSI. And there are a lot more things that can be done for BFSI. We can probably chat more about that sometime.
Probably in the subsequent sessions that we
Yes,
plan
we
to
can.
have.
We can definitely plan one more session where we talk about it.
Okay. Any other use cases?
Yes.
Chatbots is obviously
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the natural ways of
Correct.
because it's communication
Correct.
and language
Correct.
is what we are looking at and
Correct.
speaking about
Correct.
plain English-based
Correct.
conversational AI.
Correct.
But if we were to look at some other use cases, chatbots being one of the most popular ones where people tend to shift or the conversation starts from there.
Right.
Any other use cases that you could think of which
So,
is non-chatbot or
Yeah,
chat
so
interface based?
before we get there, Shirish, I would like to also just kind of highlight, because you said, this is something that product managers would want to think about, right? When they think about chatbot, it's not just chat with data.
Correct.
Right, you can as in chat with static data or some data documentation that you already have. It's not just that. It can go beyond that, wherein you can get your chatbot to make certain API calls or any other
Okay.
external calls to chat with external systems.
Oh, okay.
Right, so you can translate what a user has said
Uh-huh.
into API call of sorts that can talk to an external system. Like maybe you want to book a doctor's appointment, right?
Right,
That's a
okay.
good use case, right?
Right.
Now you don't know, like is
Whether
the
the
doctor available
available or
at 3
not.
p.m. on a Wednesday?
Oh, okay.
Right. So you and this is something we have done, right? I'll show it to you later
Sure.
maybe. But yeah, so you tell the chatbot I'm available at 3 p.m. on Wednesday to book an appointment with Dr. Shirish, right?
Okay,
So
that
then
would be great if I
right.
would have been a doctor.
Right. So what it can do is it can check, it can make an API call, it can try to book that appointment, and if it doesn't work,
Okay.
then the response, whatever JSON, XML, whatever response the API has, the AI model can understand that and then give you a natural language response saying seems like Dr. Shirish is not available at 3 p.m. Would 4 p.m. on Wednesday work?
That
Right?
would be
That
great
is
then.
something that an AI model can do without any human intervention. This is possible today, and developers can do this with just API calls to AI,
So
models.
getting a JSON response to a human would have been difficult, but if it is
Correct.
directly other set of options,
Correct.
it becomes easier for me to just choose that
Exactly.
option and move ahead.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is there
So-
anything else like
Yeah.
entities and all that information
Correct.
that typically we get a lot of text and we need to analyze, summarize, extract information from
Correct.
that? Is there something that we can leverage this Gen AI for?
Yes. Named entity extraction or named entity retrieval is what it's called generally.
Okay.
Wherein if you have a large corpus of text, right, and you want to extract out specific things from that text. For example, say you want to analyze SMS data, right? You get SMS from your bank.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
and then it's or you buy kanda bhaji, for example, right? You did that on Swiggy through the AI interface we just spoke about. Now you got a SMS from your bank saying you have been charged rupees 400 for kanda bhaji and chai at Swiggy, and your account balance is XXX, right? So what we can do further here is you can get your generative AI to convert this data in the SMS into a structured JSON or an XML format.
So does it have the capability to show that I am having a lot of junk food? or investing in a lot of junk
That
food?
is yes, that also is something we can do probably. Once we get this data in a structured format, we can again ask it, is kanda bhaji junk food? It'll of
I
course say
hope so.
yes.
I hope no one builds that kind of a thing, and especially if it is built. Also, my wife doesn't see that. Hopefully, that would help.
Yes.
Yep. Can we see something? If at all.
We can look at this example itself,
Okay.
where
That would be great for the
yeah,
audience to just
sure,
experience
sure,
something which is non-chat based at least.
sure. Uh, Let me just.
So you'd be sharing your screen.
Yes, let me. I think is my screen visible on the live? Can someone
Yes.
confirm? Okay.
Hold on.
So I'm in a ChatGPT interface right now. Of course, when you build it for
Okay.
your app.
So for the audience, you are able to see the screen, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So for the live audience, probably we'll need to just
Yeah.
share your
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
The offline audience, you are able to see the screen, right? Yeah. Cool. Just a quick connect. Yep. Looks like we are here.
And there we go. Is it visible to the online audience now?
Looks like yes. Cool. So you are on GPT.
I'm on ChatGPT right now, right?
Okay.
So what actually would happen is, right now I'll show it to you on ChatGPT
Sure.
itself, but in reality, a developer would integrate OpenAI or any other LLM's API call.
Sure.
And sorry, just a minute. Yeah, any other LLM's API call, or OpenAI for that matters, if you're using ChatGPT, to send this data in an API to the LLM, and they'll get a JSON response. But I'll just show it to you here, right? So let's say you get a SMS from your bank saying your account is debited with rupees 400 on Swiggy using credit card
XXX. Hopefully that XXX doesn't showcase the entire data.
credit limit is rupees 25,000.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a decent size in terms of credit.
Get JSON data from the.
So this is the instruction that you're talking
this
about,
is the
right?
instruction, right? So we give it an instruction saying get data from the given SMS text in JSON in the below JSON format.
Okay.
Right? And then I give it a JSON format.
Okay, we need to provide the structure.
That's not necessary, but
Okay.
if you give it a structure, you get a better structured output, right? So amount spent, available
balance.
limit,
Okay.
spent merchant name, card number.
Okay.
I hit enter
And fingers crossed, and here it comes.
yeah, you get JSON, right?
That's nice.
You can prompt it a little better to get just JSON input.
Nice.
Wherein
This is cool.
and you can give it a little more instruction to say amount spent should be an integer, right? Right now it's a string, right?
Yes.
So it will be difficult for your programmers to integrate it probably or do calculations, but you can go beyond and you can actually prompt it better to get string.
So this is pretty neat, and we can use multiple such model drill down and get a use case which is much more useful and can do much more complex things, right? This is obviously very straightforward, but it's pretty quick to deliver also is what I feel. So time to deliver to the market.
It's just an API call away, right?
Okay.
So you just have your prompt with the instructions, and then your actual text message, go to OpenAI, you get the response back, you integrate into your app. So basically with something like this, if you have, you can build a ledger of all the expenditure that a user has done, right? Again,
Nice.
whether
Pretty good.
you should or should not access SMS data is a whole
All
different
different
topic,
ballgame.
but
Yes. I was about to
yeah,
come to that
yeah.
aspect, especially when it comes to the data, right? And obviously, large enterprises or even the product engineering organizations or smaller companies who are building out products, they would definitely have this kind of a question: how do we ensure this entire thing is secure, and how do we
Correct,
protect the data?
correct,
User perspective, corporate
correct.
perspective, from various different perspectives, we need to ensure that the data is safe. So how do we ensure that whatever data goes onto these models? Obviously, one way I definitely understand is to have a custom model, which
Correct.
is inside your own premise.
Correct.
But if
Correct.
at all we are using external service providers, how do we
Right.
ensure that the data is secure?
Right. So, see, if your data goes out of your system, right, um, um,
There is a chance that
there is a chance that it's not secure, right?
Okay.
Of course, all your LLM providers like your OpenAI or everyone will claim that they are following best practices and all that, but then there have been incidents that have happened where certain data has been leaked. There was an incident where some person, people were using ChatGPT with some sensitive data, and that
Oh, okay.
sensitive data got leaked. Prompts from users have been leaked on the dark net, and there have been articles
Oh,
I've been
okay.
reading around that. So all that is something that keeps happening because OpenAI is a large company. They would definitely want to use the data you give to learn from whatever it is that they are
Obviously,
doing.
yes,
And
machine
right,
learning is happening
exactly,
with that
that is
data.
data is what they will make money on, right? So ultimately there is a good chance that if your data leaves your infrastructure, leaves your environment, leaves your system, uh, security is definitely a concern. One way of doing it is, like for example, something like this. You don't say, the example we saw, right? We don't say that this is done by Shirish.
Yep.
So
The data is scrambled.
the data is basically scrambled, right? We
Understood.
are getting structure for certain data that is just data. You can't, like someone spent 400 rupees
On something,
on
on some
something,
platform with
right?
some credit card.
Yeah, on
Okay.
platform with some credit card, right? Now you don't get any other details there. So, I think you are safe from that perspective. But if you get deeper, for example, if you pass in certain legal documents which have
Oh, okay.
certain sensitive information, and
Right.
if you want to do something similar like this for
Entity
certain
extraction. Yep.
entity extraction for some legal documents, then that probably becomes an issue,
Okay.
right? And a good practice there is generally to host your own
Own
model,
models.
right? As in build on top of an existing AI model,
Okay.
open source model,
Okay.
host it in your own infra, run GPU instances, have that model running, and run inference. So
In fact, that was
getting,
my next
yeah,
follow-up question, or what I get from my own uh, customer base, which I'm talking to day-to-day basis, that if at all we were to host this entire models or set of models on my own infrastructure, the typical question that we will need to answer would be what kind of budgets do we need, right? How
right,
do I convince the management that this investment is going to be fruitful, or the ROI is going to be expected within a period of this
right,
period of time, right?
right,
So is there a thought process or a mechanism or some sort of framework which we can use to at
right.
least
So
evaluate a
correct.
budget for these kind of exercises or these kind of experiments?
Right. So, since things are very rapidly changing there isn't a fixed framework that you can think about, but one good mental model that you can follow in general is whenever you want to start, when you start thinking of, integrating LLM apps within your products,
Products.
right? Uh, Before you jump into deciding, hey, I want to use an open source model that's running on a cluster of GPUs and whatnot, experiment with what's freely available.
Understood.
Right. So go to ChatGPT, do exactly what I did here right now. Do your prompt design here and see if it works. If whatever you're doing is something that would work. Use scrambled data, integrate it with your products in your dev environment, staging environment,
Understood.
whatever environments you have, lower environments, and
Correct.
see if it actually works and if it's actually providing value, right? And once you're confident that it is largely there, and you want to now take the next step wherein you want to really go forward with this and then show it to your customers, then start thinking about what
Actual
open
production
source
grade.
models should
Yeah.
I explore. There are a lot of open source models that are specific to certain use cases as well,
Exactly. Yep.
right?
So
So
some may be better at solving, some may be better
correct,
at
Correct.
image processing,
Some are,
maybe on
yeah,
computer vision.
exactly.
Understood.
Exactly, right? So, then you can, dive deeper into exercise wherein you start to evaluate multiple models. You can shortlist 4 models which are good at what you want to do. Then run the same
Parallel
prompts.
experiments.
Yeah, same prompts you ran with ChatGPT, run the same prompts with those models and see which one is giving you a good output, right? And then once you are there, then you look at if you want to fine tune a certain model, and
Yep.
then you deploy it, and that's the way to go about it.
I vividly remember we did this for some company where we were speaking to some of the VPs, and if at all you could just help us understand how we pitched there and how we managed to actually get to a production grade
Right,
model,
right,
that would help probably get a
right.
better sense for the
Correct,
audience on how
correct,
to break it down into smaller chunks, experiment,
right.
probably demonstrate, and then get the buy-in from the
Correct,
management.
correct. So we wanted to build a chatbot for a healthcare, thing for booking appointments and
Okay.
for doing certain other evaluations. Asking the end user certain questions based on which during the appointment with the healthcare provider, they'll be able to get better responses
Okay.
because they have thought about what all they want to ask the healthcare provider, right?
Understood.
So to do this, what we initially did is, we broke down whatever we would want the user to ask into
Okay.
certain tools. We call
Okay.
it tools, right?
Okay.
For example, there's an appointment booking tool.
Understood.
There is a, skin evaluation tool.
Oh, okay.
There is a tool that will, kind of, basically these are different modules. If you
Modules.
think
If
about,
to
yeah,
simplify in
in a
terms of
pro,
software engineering, which is more
exactly,
conducive,
software
it is
engineering or
certain
product
modules.
yeah,
Okay.
these are certain modules, right? Now, each module has a set of prompts. So,
Okay.
ultimately what matters with LLM apps is prompt engineering and how good your prompt is,
Yes.
right? So each of these modules have a different set of prompts. We tried if it would work well with ChatGPT, right? And once we were able to get it working with ChatGPT, we explored a few other models, right? Uh, Llama 2 recently came
Yes.
out, right? So,
Yes.
so we tried with that and we got pretty good
Good
results
result.
there.
Okay.
We plan to try with Anthropic Cloud
Okay.
sometime in the coming week, and we'll probably, I think we'll get really good results
Results
there
there
as
also.
well.
Okay.
And then it ultimately boils down to a, cost analysis of what's cheaper for us to run, or, what's
Right.
most cost efficient for us to run in our infrastructure and then deploy there. And since this does not have a lot of sensitive user specific data,
Correct.
I think we would also be okay with using OpenAI directly in production as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So since you brought up evaluation and there will be multiple models that we may look at, right? Do certain POCs with those
Right,
models.
right.
How do we typically, is there a way, again, maybe a bit early in the time, but is there a good decent way to test our hypothesis or evaluate whether it is working fine or not? Like you mentioned, accuracy,
Right,
right? Or
right,
performance.
right,
Typically, that is what people
right,
would need, right? Everything at
right.
fingertips and
Correct,
responding within milliseconds.
correct.
So, is there a way to test and also ensure that the performance is also lightning fast?
Yes. With all of these LLMs, right? Because for all intents and purposes, they have a mind of their own,
All right.
right? Because they are truly AI. As
AI.
in, it seems like magic, but yes, they have a mind of their own, right? So there are possibilities that in certain cases they might not give you the response that you want.
Okay.
Right. So there is this concept called guardrails. There is also a
Okay.
framework called guardrails with
Okay.
AI, where through prompt engineering, you refine the output you have received.
Understood.
Right. So you ask it to evaluate itself.
Okay.
Because it's intelligent, it's able to do that.
So this is a good,
Right.
decent point.
Yeah.
I guess there are a lot of discussions or articles that I have read online where there is a concept called hallucination where
Yes.
the
Yes.
model itself starts believing
Correct.
on different
Correct.
things and starts
Correct.
responding in an inappropriate manner.
Correct.
So in order to ensure that it doesn't go completely crazy, what you are recommending is we need to have guardrails and
Correct.
a constant evaluation of its own responses.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Can
Correct.
you elaborate a bit on that?
Sure. So hallucination is
Yep.
definitely a very real problem in AI models, where it either gives you some information. We saw this case of a lawyer trying to fight his own case in court, and then
Right.
it cited certain cases that have happened in the past which were not real. but they seemed very real, right? When you
Okay.
read it as a layman, you would feel, "Arey, this is real. I should probably use this in real
Appears
world," right?
something similar to a movie scene. But yeah,
Right,
continue.
yeah,
Sorry.
right. But then it's not actually real, right? It makes up data on its own, right? A very simple way of, saying, avoiding that is tell it, don't make up data. If you don't know, say you don't know. In your
Right.
prompt, if you just add this one line saying don't make up answers, if you don't know, say you don't know, it'll say I don't know,
Oh, okay.
right?
So that way, at
It's,
least we are
yeah, yeah.
making sure that it is not responding
Correct,
something
correct.
which is
But
not
even
appropriate.
then, in certain cases that also might not work. So
Okay.
if you have guardrails, or a self-evaluation kind of a mechanism, right? So we use this framework called LangChain to
Okay.
build AI apps, right? Now, this LangChain basically means there is a
Chain.
chain of prompts that goes to OpenAI, comes back, go to OpenAI, come back, and finally show the result to the
Okay.
human or whoever is asking doing the Q&A, human app, whoever has initiated the chain, right? So there is a chain of prompts that's going to go back and forth. So it has something called a self-evaluation chain, wherein you can set certain rules that in the output, for example, in what we saw just now, one of the self-evaluation criteria could be that the amount spent should always be an integer or
Right.
a floating point number or something like that, right? So whenever a response from the LLM comes,
You
it
need to ensure.
sends this response back to the LLM
For
saying, you know, these were the rules and this is the output we got.
evaluate.
What evaluate it?
Understood.
It will say the output given was, as in it failed, right? So
Understood.
then it will say, okay, now fix it.
Okay, so this is a
So
kind of a testing framework also
kind of
that
a
comes
testing,
into.
yeah.
So
Self-evaluation is
self-evaluation.
what it's
Okay,
called. Yeah.
got it. So I think this is good enough at least. One last question that
Sure.
probably I had,
Sure.
which probably most of the audience would have, and then people here also who are present,
Right.
definitely want me to ask,
Sure.
is essentially if you are partially answered it that you need to have in-house models, but if at all I want it to work only on my data, right, have custom data fed into it, train the model on my data set.
Sure. When you say training your own,
So like we just saw, right, this is the data that probably I did in terms of transactions.
correct.
So if I were to train the model on my own data set, then how do we go about it?
Correct. So there are multiple types of training, right? So one is you can do something called as fine tuning, wherein you have a model that's good, that's ready, available, right? And then you add an additional layer of it, which kind of you say if you get this question, this should be the answer. If you get this question, this should be the answer, kind of a thing. Like for example, if we were to train or fine tune a model for this kind of a use case, what we would say is this is the string that is the question and this is a JSON that is the answer. A string that is the question and the JSON that is the answer. So what that will help with is, one, you don't have to give a big prompt like we gave in the starting saying, given this, you have to give me the JSON structure and all. That prompt you can eliminate.
Understood.
So the model that you have is fine tuned. It knows that when it gets a string, it should convert it into JSON and give you just JSON. Right.
Understood.
So that is fine tuning. Now, where that helps is, especially if you're using OpenAI and other LLMs, not open source models,
Okay,
but
other models.
LLMs that are kind of charging you per token.
Oh, understood.
Right. So a token is kind of a bunch of words, right? So if they are charging you per token, then with fine tuning you can reduce your per cost.
Per
But
call.
because the number of tokens you would have to send to do back and
Get the
forth
required
is,
answers,
get
that will be lesser.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that essentially helps in the
That
costing
helps.
also.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just quickly check whether we have any questions online from
Sure.
our audience.
Sure.
Just give me a moment.
Yeah. And other than that, for training on your own data that you have, you can also take certain open source model and completely train them, wherein you take a base model and then supply your data, and then that becomes a larger model which has all the information of your data. But the thing there is, your data could keep changing. Right. So a very good way of doing this is, what I mentioned before, like if you have a large corpus of data, how do you do Q&A on that? That is something called in-context training with vectors and everything. We can probably, dive deeper into it. That's more of a hands-on thing which I can show. Maybe not right now, but we can definitely plan something for that in the future.
One good-
So in-context learning with retrieval augmentation, if at all someone wants to read.
Nice.
Yeah.
There is one good question that I see from the audience. How would generative AI impact the traditional user experience of consumer products, right? That is
Interesting.
one question that we've had. So any insights on that question that you may want to throw?
Sure. So it will definitely, if done smartly, right, if done in a proper way, it can definitely improve the user experience of a lot of, in a lot of different ways, right? Like, let me just stop sorry, I'll just close this.
Sure.
Yeah. Help with the user experience in a lot of different ways, right? One very nice way is, where you ask, just consider this example, right? Say you ask a user to upload a file and then ask the user to say which category does this file belong to, what is the subcategory, what is this, what is that. With something like what we just saw, entity recognition, you would probably be able to automatically detect what category it belongs to,
Understood.
right?
So a lot of e-commerce use cases may be having this kind
Yes,
of
definitely.
outcome.
Yep. So
Recognizing what
correct.
product falls in which category,
Yes,
subcategory.
yes. So all of that is, it improves the user experience ultimately. And it does not look like generative AI or anything like that. I remember, our design team keeps saying that, a good UX is when a user doesn't realize there is UX work that's done or something like that, right? So that's what this will ultimately, help in.
Right. The other couple of questions that we already spoke of, I think the security aspect is what most of the people wanted to understand, which we partially answered, I
Right,
guess.
right.
There is also questions around custom development when it comes to custom data, which we touched based upon, I
Right,
guess.
right.
What are the key things that we need to take care of while initiating Gen AI? I guess on a similar lines, what typically a product owner would ask, that how do we start key aspects of building a product or integrating AI into product? If you could just summarize probably for the audience, I guess we covered
Right.
various aspects, but
Correct, correct. So start by basic prompt engineering to see if the use case you have identified is able to help solve the problem, right? Use free tools like ChatGPT or any other, free LLMs, low cost LLMs. See if it works for you. Once it works for you, work with your engineers to integrate it in your product using something like ChatGPT. OpenAI's APIs are very easily accessible. They are, very pocket friendly. They are not at all expensive, right? So you do that and see if you can actually, if it makes sense to add that as a use case. And once you feel confident about it, then start exploring other open source models and, what model to choose, how to run it, and things like that. I think that kind of sums up the, mental model you should have to go about it.
one again interesting question which has been doing circles over the internet
Right.
also, right, around jobs, right? And whether AI will impact jobs or whether it will create jobs.
Got it.
There is one particular area that people are speaking of on this particular conversation, with whether it will impact sales, whether it will impact marketing, contact center. Any thoughts around that?
Sure. So impact on jobs is a very,
Wide.
wide topic, right? It depends on, what kind of job. It will definitely improve the productivity of people who would want to use AI, right? For
Right.
example, if you look at, GitHub's Copilot and things like
Yep,
that,
yep.
it improves the productivity of software developers by multiple X, right?
Correct.
You I don't know if you have used it, but
Yes,
I
yes,
have,
we did.
right? So whenever it kind of writes the code that's already there in my mind,
Right.
right? So I just have to press tab and it's done,
So
right? So
will it reduce the number of people needed, or will it allow us to tap into more opportunities? I guess people should look into
exactly,
that aspect, that today
exactly.
we were able to deliver 10 things, probably with the same kind of strength. Without reducing the strength, we may be able to deliver 100
Deliver
things,
100
right?
things, exactly.
And
That's the way to look at it,
correct.
not the other way around, wherein, I was able to deliver this with, 10 people instead of 100, so let me fire 90. That's not the way to look at it, right?
Understood.
So the better way to look at it is with 100, I can deliver
More.
10x more.
Understood.
Right.
So that essentially is the productivity aspect in various
Correct,
areas, right? So
correct.
obviously there will be reskilling, upskilling that may be required.
Definitely.
Certain
And
parts
this was
may
just
get
software
automated.
development I told about, right? There are a lot of other areas like, creative writing is
Right.
something that has always been at risk with the advent of generative AI. But if creative writers use it well, they can, for example, whatever would take a creative writer, a content writer, maybe 4 days to write an article, a SEO friendly article, they can probably do that in 4 hours now.
Nice.
Right?
So that's right. It is more of an assistant is what we typically
Exactly,
would
a
want to believe.
co-pilot. A co-pilot is
Co-pilot is
the
the best word.
best
I guess,
word, correct.
Okay. Cool. I think this summarizes a lot. I think on the online, I do not have other different questions that I can see. We'll be taking some offline questions from the audience, if at all.
So thank you very much, Varun, for elaborating the core things of the generative AI. So my question is related to the BFSI, banking, financial service, and all these things. So what are your use cases that you think of especially for BFSI?
Right.
I think
So,
we BFSI kind of touch
covered,
based,
yeah.
but yeah, if at all you would want to just go
I
through
think
again.
we kind of already covered a bit of it. So again, like I had said, before also, chatbot is the most obvious use case. But then, things like, getting details out of larger chunks of text or doing some kind of a prediction kind of thing using OpenAI or something like that is something that is a better use case. We can, of course, dig deeper into actual real use cases, do some analysis and come up with better use cases at some point. We can probably also do another session on that. But yeah, largely, yes, that kind of covers it. Yeah.
Hi, this is Sheikh. Thank you for your talk. So, I just wanted to ask you questions regarding that. We know in technically, I just want to ask you, like we know that whatever we just for considering these questions, I mean this example that we just prompt something or it is generating and giving
Right.
the output as expected. Okay. So, as we know that is all about the data model design, right? How it designs, so it's a speak data as per the customer, human queries. So, in technically how it works internally, as we know that it is calling API integration, so how it works, I mean how the data model works, categorize all this data and picking the data based on the requirement and query of the human. So I just wanted to know this quickly.
So you would want to understand the internals of these models, right? How those models generate the response based on the prompt that we do.
Okay. So for example, I got your point. But the thing is, for example, if you want to, as you say that already spoken, that if you're going to integrate a kind of API, open HIGPT in our any production in our application, so how it will be going to implement? I mean, for example, is it cost effective? Because as we know that
Right.
in other hand, it is also kind of impacts the security concern as well. So I just wanted to know. I mean.
Do you want to summarize this question for the online audience?
Yeah, so for online audience, so what we have a question here is first of all, how do we understand how the model works, right? How are the internals structured? Because again, I think it boils down what his question was also to evaluate, understand
Correct.
whether it's going to be cost effective or not, whether it's going to be secure or not, whether it will function well with my data or not.
Right.
How do we understand which model is more suitable? Because
Right.
we will need to understand certain level of internals on the model side.
Correct.
So if you could just throw some light
Sure,
on that.
sure. So one thing, how the internals are, right? How a model works and, how it generates the output that we are able to get is something that we don't really need to get at all. We don't need to understand. That's the beauty of the generative AI, boom that's happening, right? Wherein all your AI is just an API call away, right? So you have a REST API call. You send your prompt text as in your request body. You send it to it. You get text response, right? It's as simple as that. So if you have an app where you have certain text that a user is generating based on something, you send that text to the OpenAI APIs, you get a response. You don't have to worry about how it works internally, right? That's the beauty of the boom that's happening, and that's the reason why the boom is also happening, right? Now, the second part of your question around, security and, cost effectiveness and things like that, that completely depends on the specific use case that you're trying to target, right? But a good way to look at it is, if again you're using OpenAI's APIs, right? They have a pricing page, right? You can go there and see, okay, for a particular user, if I need to do certain operations, then I need to do, say, 3,000 tokens, right? So for example, if a user asks a question around some topic like X, right? On an average, I need to spend 3,000 tokens. and OpenAI charges, these many dollars, 0.00 something per 1,000 tokens. So it will probably cost you $0.50 for answering a question for a user, right? So then based on that, you can extrapolate it to the number of users you have, number of interactions you might have, and you can do typical product engineering stuff to see, what your ultimate cost might boil down to.
Understood.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Thank you.
I think we'll take one last question before
Sure.
we wrap up.
Sure.
Good, interesting question that models are getting trained every time. Again, based on which model we choose. If it is
Right.
a custom model which we
Right.
build on top of the open source models, we'll train it continuously,
Correct.
right? And if we are using something which is like OpenAI, which also is getting trained continuously, do we need to retest after the model has been trained for a certain period of time, right? Let's
Yes.
say we started off using the model today, probably 6 months down the line, the model has grown and probably has learned a lot more or has been trained a lot more than 6 months back.
Right.
Do we need to retest anything or go
So-
back and check for accuracy?
Yes, so the way model training and everything works, right? So when you train a model, ideally you would have to test the model and then deploy it in production.
Understood.
You should not train what's already there in production. That's not how it would work.
Okay.
Right? You would have to train a model. So when you say training a model and storing it is basically, if you think of it as a neural network, what you're changing when you're training is the weights of the network, right? Of the weights between the nodes in the network, right? So that is essentially what you're changing, right? And then you save those weights in some format or the other. There are multiple ways of doing it.
Understood.
And then you deploy that into production, right?
Okay.
You don't train something that's actually already running,
Understood.
right? Ideally, there are ways of doing a couple of those things as well, but yeah, in general, you don't. One way is, again, like I said, in context training or in context learning,
Understood. So
wherein
that is
within the prompt itself, you give it information so that it can answer the question the user has asked. That's something you can do.
Cool. I guess we almost are at the top of the time.
Awesome.
To summarize, I guess you've already summarized it for the audience that how we could get started
Correct.
in terms of evaluating the use cases, how to start testing it at lower environments so that we can get certain results
Correct.
which can be used to do some sort of a budgeting, understanding the security aspects,
Right.
building custom models. I guess that is again a deeper conversation, which probably
Correct.
we may need to have a
One
separate
more
conversation
yeah,
around
that,
that.
Yeah, that might also have to be hands-on.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
So I think this gives us a good sense, at least. I hope the audience also gained decent information from the conversation. And again, you can keep reaching out to us on the mail ID that would be provided, so that if at all there are any questions or in case you would want more details, we can continue the conversations offline. Right?
Yep.
I guess-
And follow Coditas everywhere. So, we definitely, want to talk more about generative AI and all the work that we are doing. And, the BFSI use case that we spoke about, we'll definitely plan something around that, Shirish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you
Awesome.
so much. I guess this is it, guys. Thank you for your time today, especially on a Saturday. It was good having you here.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Yes.